I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. Very good. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. In favor of approving the agenda for today's meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please record the vote was unanimous. Next item on our agenda, approval of minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the April 15th regular meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second? Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the April 15th regular meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Record the vote as unanimous. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the May 4th special meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes for the May 4th special meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please record the vote as unanimous. Next item on the agenda is the president's remarks. I have a couple. In light of the tragedy that happened a couple of weeks ago when a pedestrian was struck by a vehicle and killed, I credit John and his team for finding this information. This was sent out in one of the email blasts, and let me read it because I think it's important. It has to do with people walking on the sidewalks, walking on the streets, which direction they're supposed to be walking in. So, and I'll read it. Where a sidewalk is not provided, pedestrians must walk on the left shoulder, left of the roadway, facing any traffic that might approach from the opposite direction. This is important. And although I think it's interesting that I'm not sure how you can enforce it, but walking on the opposite side is a violation of Maryland Transportation Code 21-506B, and violators are subject to a $50 fine. Okay. Now, it might sound ludicrous. It might sound, kind of flippant, but the idea is that, you see a lot of people walking, especially on Ocean Parkway, with their back to the traffic. And, kind of maybe it's considered a public service announcement. I think this is something that people should be aware of and try to practice more often. Now, will we be able to levy the $50 fine? I doubt it seriously from a practical perspective, but I think, educating and knowledge that there is a rule out there that's for their safety, should certainly be, be out there in front of the public. And there's also another one about the bicycle riders, that there's another Maryland Transportation Code 21-1210B. Riders cannot operate a bicycle and wear earplugs in both ears. Okay, so it's another one where you can't hear the traffic. So just be aware of those kinds of things, because clearly, and going back to the survey a couple of years ago, safety was one of the top issues for Ocean Pines members. So the idea of a little bit of practice, a little bit of encouragement, maybe you mention it to a friend or somebody that you see at one of the amenities and so on and so forth, just that, hey, by the way, there's some laws out there for safety of people either on bicycles or walking on the crowded parkways. So with that in mind, actually two other comments. The other one is Memorial Day is coming up. The event at the Veterans Memorial is Monday, the 29th. At 11 o'clock. So if you're so inclined, please attend that event to honor those who have served our country. And I think it's very important that they be recognized as well. And then finally, at the last meeting, I was put on the spot by an association member with regard to the cell tower. And I committed to the organization that I would look into it and have started that process. John and I have been reaching out to Verizon. There's some logistics things that we're coordinating. So just an FYI, an update on that. I don't have anything yet, but as I stated and committed to, am looking into that issue. Whether or not we will get a new cell tower, I can't guarantee that. But as I said, we're looking into it. And as soon as more updates come, I'll certainly present those as well. So after that, that's all I have to say. Next item on the agenda is the GM report. John.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Just want to start off, as I always do. There's a nice painting of the yacht club. I do want to give credit to the assistant, Michelle, who did a lot of work on this. Let's go through it. We have a lot. Okay, so I always start off with this page, the initiatives, and right at the top, and rightfully so, is the marina. If anybody lives down there or paying attention, a lot of focus, a lot of money was invested there, but we're getting good results. So I will go through all these initiatives as well as Linda with the ones that she has. So turn the page. Okay, so the Marina gas dock pictures, as I've said, say 1,000 words. If you look at the middle picture, it's organized. We brought in all the contractors, obviously from our end, the orchestration and the organization and picking the right contractors is key to any successful initiative. I believe we have that here. On the right is a picture of the new dock. If you haven't seen it, please go down and see it. The useful life will be longer. The maintenance will be less, and the safety that's involved now is absolutely incredible and awesome, and we're there. So it's all good for Ocean Pines, but let's get into the piece here. So we were missing, one of the reasons we didn't complete this week, missing for the pumps. That part has arrived. It's on Baltimore soil. It's on its way here. We will have it on Monday. We have the contractors lined up. The inspections all lined up between Monday and Wednesday. Everything goes right, we'll be pumping on Friday. Obviously, next weekend is Memorial Day weekend. That's the plan. So far, all systems go. I know Keith's here. He's giving me the nod. We may have to do some things on the software since we don't have the Windows, but Keith and his team working with Ron Fisher, we have a stopgap measure that I believe will be successful. And thank you, Keith, and everybody else, Ron. Okay, so the main thing is the inspection. Keep everybody updated on that, but we believe we're on track now that this piece is in somewhere between the Baltimore area and here, but I believe it'll be on Ocean Point soil Monday. Turn the page. Okay, so last board meeting, a lady came forward and she mentioned to me and the board, obviously, about the showers down at the marina. When she said there was only one shower, I didn't understand that because I knew there was three, but she was correct. If you looked at the three showers, one was broken, one had storage in there. I'm not sure why. All that's been taken care of. We've upgraded the showers. There were 3 showers in there now that look just like that. And I believe next year during the winter or the off season, we will also have that on the maintenance plan. All 3 are operational. We've addressed this. So thank you to that lady bringing it forward. Turn the page, maintenance. Golf, let's talk golf. 76 golf courts were ordered. We know about that. We got out there before everybody else. We got them. You know, there's supply chain issues everywhere. The golf carts are here. I believe the last ones came yesterday. There's 76 golf courts. They're all here. Purchased from Yamaha, approved by the board on that date. The replacement cost was $260. They look great. A couple other things on golf just before I came in here. I know somebody said to me yesterday they never saw this place so crowded, and that person's correct. I believe it was Doug. Yesterday, 258 rounds versus 226 last year on the same day. We did almost $20,000 in revenue yesterday compared to $16,000 last year. The pro shop, which everybody's supporting, 2,500 versus 400 last year. Golf numbers are excellent. Turn the page. Public Works. So Public Works, obviously any initiative, everything somehow, some way, Public Works is involved. Eddie Noby, the entire team. Some of the items there, one on the left, that's the gazebo for the golf course. Apparently it's an iconic gazebo that has a lot of history here. We're trying to get it completed. I know Eddie in his spare time has been replacing the roof. And he's telling me that we'll have it back on the golf course. I think it's the 14th fairways. It'll be in time for the Taylor tournament, Taylor Bank tournament, where I guess it all comes from. The palm trees. This is a big one. I know everybody's asked about the palm trees. Palm trees, and I was there yesterday, they were putting them in. We're putting extra palm trees, and you also see them on the Northgate Bridge. I know Ricky asked me to get another palm tree for there. We will do that. We're in the process. I think it's great. The palm trees, everybody compliments on it. We certainly want to go forward on that. So if you're at the beach club during Memorial Day, I know I like it. I feel like I'm in Jamaica or somewhere in the Caribbean, but it looks great. Turn the page. All right, North Star. Haven't mentioned much on North Star, but it is operational. Obviously, it's been stabilized. Compliments to the entire team. Having Keith on board is certainly helping. That's Keith over there. I'm sure he didn't want that, but he's doing a great job. I know in these meetings when I'm here, is he smiling? No. So golf integration, easy links to be implemented fiscal year 2024. So this is big. Look, obviously efficiencies. This is what I'm telling the team. Anytime I can get an interface, and I think the only 2 that we didn't have interfaces for with North Star was Easy Links as well as in the point of sale systems you were using for the yacht club and the other food and beverage. Stay tuned on that. This is a big one. This is big for me, especially what I've seen go on down here. This is the last piece I need. So Keith, the team, the gentleman from North Star now is on the Eastern Shore. He's located, I think, in Atlanta. So we'll get a lot more in-person meetings with them. The guy is terrific. Easy Links 2024. That's a big win for the team in for Ocean Pines. Also, and maybe Debbie talks about this, she's going to give a brief update, but making the check-in at the Racket Center easier by using swipe cards and setting up online reservations for new classes, leagues. That's a big one. Also, we have that on the list. So those are two big things for me and for the team. Turn the page. And the route you want to go with a system. It's overtime. Okay, Racket Center, the maintenance, I got to be honest with you, if I look back 2019 when I first came here and where we are now, the team, the people down at the Racket Center, the members and everything, I think it looks way better than it did. That the board who have approved what we've come forward with. So just a couple things there. We've done a lot of maintenance there. There's a list there. You can read it. I'm not going to go through it. We've been continuing on that. The clubhouse is the best I've seen it. Let me just go to the right. So we got that new ice machine that was requested by the advisory committee. So you go to the right. We had committed to this. We're working on it. We're putting in what we call the shade gazebo, similar to that blue one that's straight down. We said we would put the other one. I committed to that 2 years ago. There it is. We're working on it. Should be operational.
Hopefully next week.
Hopefully next week, Debbie says. So there it is. There's the roof on the bottom. One of the reasons we were a little late on it is they sent the wrong roofing material, the wrong color. I believe that is in, and that's why we'll get it. Okay. All the squeegee, everything. I get a list. Debbie gets a list. It seems like there's always a list, but that's fine for the Racket Center, and I believe we're on top of it. Turn the page. Okay, so Racket Center court maintenance. Having Tim here, obviously, and I'm sure Debbie will attest to this, especially on the tennis courts. I know Dale was into it, very happy. We have somebody on our team now. He's certified. He knows all this stuff. So he's actually grabbing an oar himself. The maintenance that we've allocated to Racket Sports over the last couple of years, and you all know we put somebody there full time. So I'm comfortable with that. I see what he's doing. We did bring in ATC to do the main work on the tennis courts, the pickleball. They're just like they'll be addressing any cracks. That's part of the maintenance every year. I don't know what happened before 2019, but we're addressing that. The paddle tennis, I'm going to look over at Debbie. I know 1 and 2, I gave approval to redo those 2 courts. She signed off on it, and so is Tim. So we're going to do that, and we'll work with the community there to make sure we do it in the time frame that works for them. Turn the page, and then obviously there's the sketches up there of the proposed or what we're looking at possibly for the building, but we'll talk more about that at a later meeting. Okay, so there he is up there on the right. I want to introduce him, or I want Debbie to introduce him. But Tim Johnson, he's next to me. We had a couple of board meetings again, something about free time on the courts and whatever. We had a lot of people here, and rightfully so, and I'm glad they came. They were very constructive. But we did hire somebody. We did get exactly what that advisory committee told me they were looking for, actually plus. So, I'm going to let Tim jump in. He actually has his own slide, but you can see everything that's going on there. You can read what I've put. But I asked Tim, Debbie asked Tim also to come in to talk to us about what he's doing to supplement or actually to bring us to a higher level on free clinics and anything else. He can articulate it better than me, but I can tell you the results are there. Tim.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for this opportunity to present on the things that we're doing at the Racket Center. I want to focus on the programming that we're doing over there, and it started with free spec tennis clinics beginning April 22nd. And what happened was that we had 8 or 9 players who came in. Almost all of them have joined since then. And I put in a series of ongoing classes to integrate them into the spec tennis community. So I do a drill and play with them, and they're doing great. So the spec tennis, we've got that going, and I'll be offering free time with them until the end of May. For the pickleball, I've been working with Linda Horst, our resident pickleball pro, and we've been doing instructional classes. And then I ran a drill and play session that we've seen 25 new people every week. So that's going gangbusters. National Tennis Month, I did some free clinics with juniors, with beginners, and with people who used to play and then they forgot how to play. And so I was reminding them. And we got memberships from that as well. And then I haven't done anything with the platform tennis yet, but that's mostly because it's their off season. They like to play in the snow, but so I'll develop programs for them. And then I also, that's the only sport that we have there that I'm not certified to teach in yet. And so before we ramp up the platform tennis, I will get certified so that I can coach them up as we get into the season. And so those are the things that we've been doing since I got here. And I think the results are in. People are joining. They're having a lot of fun. So I'm happy with that. And then we also have some new things that we're going to be implementing as we go along. I want to try to form some leagues. We've got tournaments that I want to put on the schedule, some socials and some fundraiser events. And so it's going to be really active down there. And I saw this 2 days ago. We had all these people. I had to park all the way out at the street. And to me, that's awesome because that means people are out there. So I just want to say thank you to the general manager and especially Debbie Donahue. They've been so encouraging and supportive, and it's really helped a lot. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Okay, one thing I can tell you, you're a numbers guy, whatever, his numbers are there, they're up. We're getting people, certainly, and he'll continue to do that. They're definitely constructive. There is, when we interviewed him, Debbie and I interviewed him, there's no truth that there was smoke coming out of the chimney after he left at the admin building. But, all right, so next, turn the page.
Coming out of the chin.
Yeah, she can go. I think strategic planning. All right, Linda's, we're going to bounce back and forth and then to Debbie. Strategic planning, Linda's got this slide.
Okay, strategic planning, we met with the strategic plan committee representatives on April 13th. There's this minor editing,
Usual slide.
including
You
just
know,
adding
make it small.
outcomes to be
You
goal.
want to do that?
And we're still on track with the strategic plan that was approved and put on the website on October 31st. We do continue to reference the plan. It's not something that sits on the shelf collecting dust. We are using it for our daily objectives, day-to-day operations, and we did use it during the budget.
Yeah, I just want to say something on strategic planning. Obviously, we use it, we update it. Linda and I, Linda leads that work group for me, for us. The KPIs, the results that we have, that's how we measure it. And it's certainly there. And if they're not there, we look at it, we relook at it. Okay, so I was going to do the slide, but Debbie's here. It certainly has stuff. Debbie's going to jump in. I just gave her the slide, so she's had 3 seconds to look at it. But Debbie, jump in.
So can I go back to
Yeah, whatever
bracket just first?
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. I did want to give a little bit of an overall, real quick, of some things at the Racket Center. We have done, like you saw on the slide, we've done a lot of upgrades to the facility overall, and the membership, as Tim said, from the clinics, the month of May being tennis month, we kind of decided to spread it around to all of the sports and use the month to be able to reach out to others, get those free clinics in, and be able to help each one of the groups, or other sports out there. With that tennis clinic, we had 17 in attendance, 9 of them working with Tim. The majority of them have gotten new memberships, whether they were combos or they were individuals for a platform. When we talk about spec tennis, it's on the platform side. So there's platform, paddle, and spec, timeless. They have a lot of different things that they do just on that one side. So when we talk about spec, that's where that lands. Currently, platform has 62 memberships, with 10 of them being brand new between April 22nd and May 19th to date. So Tim's instruction, help from volunteers. It really is doing well with having that one particular clinic and having so many people coming out. And the skills clinics that he's been doing, excuse me, from those that came for that clinic, and being able to work with them, as he said, to integrate them into the spec tennis. and platform world. As far as tennis, they have 51 memberships to date, with 6 of them being brand new members as well. And pickleball, they have 307 memberships. 34 of those, though, are brand new people. So we are getting a lot of new memberships from people that have not, and I compared it to last year, that have not been members before. So I just wanted to put that out there, that we are really getting people that have never been a part of our membership before. So, and then we have racket combos, and this year they are actually up at this point. We have 36 of them to date. Last year, all year, we only had 26, and 6 of those are brand new. Some of them have transferred from individuals to the group because they can play all 3 sports. And that was only like 4 of them, but we do have 6 brand new people that have purchased the racket combo memberships as well. So I just wanted to reiterate that we are getting brand new people, which is awesome, which is great. And then overall growth, Tim's doing a great job. Certainly makes my life a lot easier. And he is doing really well. Heard great compliments of how things have really changed in a month. So as far as the rec slide that you see up there, you get what we've had, you see on the left-hand side there. We do the Maryland Coastal Bay program every year. This year, another great success. We had approximately 1,000 people that attended. It was a great day. We do that with Maryland Coastal Bay every single year, and it's always a success. This year with the bike ride, and we do that every month, every year in May. And this year we had 75 people registered, but unfortunately it rained and it was not a nice day. So we only had 33 people that came. They rode the 7-mile course, and we started and finished here at the clubhouse, which turned out to be really great success. And thanks to Patty Stevens, she is the Worcester County Bike and Pedestrian Coalition. And we worked through her to do this safely, mapped out, and she does a great job at this program, working it with me. And we're hoping that, next year we'll get all 75 riders. So that was a great day.
Okay, Debbie, thank you very much. Tim, thank you. I know you got to get back down there. Certainly the numbers show the great job that you're doing down there. Debbie, thank you. One other thing on the biking, and Patty does do a great job. I was down here, it's really well organized. We are looking at, we're putting a work group together. Debbie's going to be the lead for me. We're going to look at what we can do with this golf course, with a cycling event or events. Debbie and Bob Beckelman are working with me on that. We think we can come up with something. So a lot of can-do people on that. So hopefully with that, and obviously Patty Stevens will be a part of it. Debbie, Tim, thank you very much. Okay, let me get back.
Thank you.
Turn the page. Aquatic lifeguard status. Obviously, every update is the lifeguard status, and it's very important to me, very important to everybody. So obviously, we are kind of on track equal with last year at this time. However, going into the summer, no different than last year. We are short on lifeguards. We are looking at it. It's probably the same game plan as of now as last year. But we have listed and we continue to try to hire lifeguards, whether it's we do the certifications. We have put more money in the budget because I'm reading out there. Yes, we did. The board approved. We put more money in there. On that, we're doing everything. Now, I did get from some people that came to me and said, you're advertising in the papers. We see your advertisements, but the people that are looking for work, looking to want ads. So as soon as I got that, I called Josh. Josh has told me any paper that has want ads, I believe it's Bayside Gazette, one of them, we've put in there. He told me something about the next 30 days. So we're putting it in there. We're constantly trying different ways to get these lifeguards. If anybody else has any constructive opinions, send it to info@oceanpines.org. We'll certainly look at it. One thing we did this year, obviously feedback from the board, several board members last year, they said, even though I did all this communication and everything on it, we didn't put from the very beginning that the pools could possibly be closed or whatever. We did that this year. One thing I want to point out, and I went through Gary Miller through the board. Gary wanted to talk to me about certain things, and I think when I showed it to him, it's like anything else. It's the way you present stuff. But I had the assistant to the assistant set up calendars for me last year, day by day, on when the pools were open and closed. And it basically showed, it was easy for me to show Gary, and I think he left the GM office with a different feeling about the pools. And look, they were closed, but if you take July 1st to August 15th, yacht club, beach club, which were always open, were open. Sports court, yes, we had a couple days that the sports court pool was closed during that period, but we had some situations with medical or whatever. But that sports court pool all year long is pretty much open. If you go to Mumford's and Swim and Racket, July 1st to August 15th, open. That's the season, open. Yes, June, shut down a lot. Maybe, you know, I know this will go whatever. But I mean, the key times we've been able to keep them open. So we are going to strive for the June period and obviously after the August 15th to try to keep those other pools open to some degree. We're trying all different ways to recruit lifeguards, just like we're trying to do laborers. So I do have these calendars. If anybody wants to see them or if they want to request a copy, they're there. But it just shows it a lot better. But we are trying. It's on the page. Aquatics lifeguard hiring efforts. I'll do this one. So we're listing everything we're doing. We have in red, which I already mentioned, in addition, help wanted ads. This will all be put in addendums by Josh, but we'll continue to strive to try to get, but you can see increased pay. Turn the page. Okay, so this was brought to my attention in this. Josh, this is another example of our team and the product that we put out there. So we received, Ocean Pines received credit to Kathleen and her team. Certificate of Excellence Awards for 4 of our pools. One pool that we didn't get it, the 911 number was down. It was beyond our, what we could do for a short period of time. Otherwise, she would have been 5 out of 5. But that other pool is definitely within that realm of Certificate of Excellence. Again, credit to Kathleen and the team. Turn the page. Guy violations.
Okay, this month we had 20 new violations. We still have 142 open. We can close out 34. We did have no new and legal and no closed and legal, but we are planning to go to court probably within the next 2 months. 40 of the remaining open, 50 are illegal. Maintenance and trash, 43 dangerous tree, 36 no permit, and 63 miscellaneous, which includes junk vehicles and vehicle parking and so forth. Work orders, we had a total of 80 work orders. It's now down to 106. It's that time of year. We have drainage work orders coming open, people coming back in town. So we still have a majority open in drainage, which is 34, and we're trying to get them closed as fast as possible. We currently have 14 that are over 30 days. And for customer service, we had 108 customer service. Just a reminder to call info 0641-7727 or email info@oceanpines.org.
Okay, so thank you, Linda, on that. So, and again, I just want to thank everybody, the board, everyone. This info@oceanpines.org, that initiative was implemented. I brought that forward when I first came into Ocean Pines in this position. Everybody has embraced it. This year, I see I check everyone. Credit to Linda, the assistant to the assistant, also, or everybody. They now have a file on all these items. We can keep track. We follow up on different items, but everybody is using it, the members and everything, and I think they're getting better results than they had in the past. So please embrace it, continue it. Great results, Linda and everybody else. Turn the page. All right, the financials. Before I go in there, just quick, I just want a little bit about dredging and drainage. We are looking at dredging. I have the team working on that. We will do dredging this year. We did it last year. We jump-started it last year after the COVID. We are putting the plan together with that. There's only certain times of the year we can because there's certain regulations about spawning or whatever, and we certainly adhere to that. So I will be coming forward with dredging, a plan as well as implementations. Same thing with drainage. It'll be the same drills the last 2-3 years. And I'll talk more about that in the financials, but we have a drainage plan. And let me tell you something, since 2019, and I have the numbers, the amount of money that this board, the membership, our team has put into drainage and the work we've done, on stuff that was never done over 30 or 50 years. That will continue this year. You have my commitment on that. The board's committed to it. I know they've already told me, and I'm like, we have a plan on it. So I will be coming forward with that. Turn the page. Financials. Okay, so April, no secret, April is the end of our year. We're a fiscal year. But I guess I'm going to talk about March first. So March, this is final on March, last board meeting. I came forward with a flash, and it's my understanding that I have to, the GM presents results obviously per our scrolls, and that's what I do. So I did come forward with a flash last month. I think I was off by a couple $1,000s. I think I came in saying maybe we were unfavorable by 2,000 or 3,000. We're favorable by 2,000 or 3,000, a couple invoices that came in. But here's your numbers. These are actuals. So for the month of March, just like I mentioned, we were favorable $2,000 to budget. You can see the revenues and the expenses. I turn the page. So here's the year to date, and let me summarize this quick. I'm running a little late. The bottom line is this: we're favorable for the year. I'll talk more when I do the April slide, but in March, we were favorable by about 1.1 million. If you look on the beginning of the controller's report on the front page, because there is some, people are saying false truths that all this favorability is because, we didn't hire people, but yet all the results and the initiatives and the accomplishments are there. But if you look in March, and I mentioned this last month, probably 90% or more of that favorability is organic in its revenue. We did have some expense efficiencies. We had increased expenses in other areas. And you're right, on the payroll side, positions weren't filled. Obviously, then that's favorable to budget. We constantly look at that. I am utilizing contractors for that, filling in with that. And I got to be honest with you, maybe the next budget, there's certainly going to be more money in there for contractors. And if we can't continue to fill these positions on labor, we're going to shift on that, but that's for later. One thing on the favorability as far as public works, that money will be utilized and put into drainage. Outside contract, the Pelican, the guy comes from, I keep saying Alabama, but it's Louisiana. He has brought us a cost efficient method where we're able to, and I've talked about this, our pipes, and we've done all our large pipes. We're down to the intermediate. Again, that'll be a separate board meeting. Turn the page. Right, that's the March year to date. It was 1115. I just talked about that, but it's there. It's for everybody. The controls report site for March. Turn the page. Okay, so that's March. I'm not sure. I went through this. Turn the page. Explain the public works. Okay, so on the unaudited reserve, Steve does this for us. This is something we never had before, but it just shows you where our reserve totals are, and we're looking good. It also shows you the money that we're spending there. Turn the page. Where's the April? Okay, so this is a flash. This is an estimate. We will have the finals, I believe, what is it, next week? Probably next week, and we will post that. We will send it out. I know I have somebody asking for it already. Anytime we have not had the controls report done on the 13th day, I've come forward with a flash, and we got to be honest with you, we've been pretty accurate on that. But the controls report will come out probably the end of this coming week. It'll be unaudited, right? Then the audit is coming in 2 or 3 weeks, and they start on that. So we're still well ahead of the auditors coming in with that. But, there's a lot of invoices, a lot of stuff. I've been going through the preliminaries with all the department heads. There are some charges that I noticed are not in there. I'd rather have them there as opposed to having adjustments during the audit and going back and forth with the auditors. That will save us money. So we were favorable around $60,000, $66,000. My guess is that's going to come down a little bit. I am anticipating, Steve's anticipating that we will be favorable for the month. That'll probably bring us somewhere around 1,180,000 or 1,150,000. If you go back 3 or 4 months, 5 months, the guidance I've been given, that's pretty much where I said we would bid. On the page. Monica.
All right, thank you, John. Just one quick question. When is the annual audit scheduled to start?
So the annual audit, I was just talking to Steve. Chris talked to him. They're probably going to be here in a couple of weeks. They have been doing a little bit. Maybe you'll see it in like 3 weeks. They'll really start.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, the treasurer's report. Monica?
Thanks, Doug. Preliminary estimate for April. As of April 30th, The association had $17.7 million in cash. Cash increased 300,000 from the same period last year. Cash increased 3.3 million from March of 2023. We had 9.1 million invested in CDARS, and the remaining 6.8 million insured cash sweep accounts, money market, and other operating accounts, which is diversified between 2 local banks. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is public comments. Be reminded that you're free to make a public comment. When you come up, please state your name and address. Your comments are limited to 5 minutes, and the floor is now open for public comments.
My name is Olaf Oostveen, 12 Florida. I got a few things to say. But first thing, I want to thank Frank. Thanks to Frank, it's the last time here as a board member. He's going to move. And we had this agreement, Frank, but you was a good board member. I appreciate it. There was a lot of good things came out to you. And the other thing, I go a little bit farther, but the violation or general manager does an outstanding job. If something brings up over here, he's the guy who get it straight out. He does a very well job. We got here a board member. Every time I come to a meeting, there's something what the board member write about the bylaws. I've been here 32 years. The bylaws always worked. Why did we keep changing things in the bylaw? We have a good book. Why did we have to charge people money if they do something wrong? This man does an outstanding job. And not to mention, I'm going to tell you something. This person who writes every month was trouble for 6 years in this board. And that's all I got to say.
Other public comments? Yes, excuse me, before we start. Keith, can we up the volume a little bit so that the folks in the room can hear the folks making public comments? There you go.
I'll speak loud, but I'm Bill Hayes, 39 White Horse, but I'm also partially on the truck route, which I typically call the truck highway. Those of you that are familiar with our 4 entrances to Ocean Pines, we have South Gate that goes south-south, south-mid. And on the north side, we have the North Gate, and then we have the truck route. And that truck route, that speed limit is 25 miles an hour. It currently has 11 divots in the side of the road on the incoming traffic side. That is my main concern because I have been the benefactor of uncoupled trailers into my front yard. I've witnessed accidents that are really kind of meaningless and shouldn't have occurred. And I think it's to the point where I have to bring it up. I know I've already gotten an okay from Doug and Frank on this idea of giving it some help, some emphasis. I also got John giving me a nod and Linda giving me a nod also saying we're going to make an effort towards it. I know it takes some sort of county work, but here are my 3 examples. We are bikers and we have to travel with the traffic. But a trailer coming down, a professional who runs his trailer every day, his trailer door opens up and comes flying out to the side. It's what takes our signs down. If you see the sign that goes out across the North Gate and there's something that happens there, that's what took our sign out. This open trailer door probably. What takes the lights down sometimes, incoming on the gate. If I go to the dump right now in Snow Hill, there are 2 signs out from professional drivers that allowed their trailer door to open up. That coupled with a divot in the road could take out a bicyclist who was driving with the traffic. My other example is a tuna gaff. You know, you ever watch Wicked Tuna and how to get the fish out and into the boat? Well, that thing sits in a rod holder, side of a boat. Hit a bump, phew, there goes the gaff. Who's it hit? Somebody walking alongside the road. The bikers are at risk. I would not ride a bike down that road. I'd go out the North Gate. North Gate, everything on Ocean Parkway kind of has an area to be safe in. But there's nothing on Beecham Road or our truck route. So whatever effort it takes, I'd appreciate that. We, 4 people right there at the intersection of Ocean Parkway and St. Martin's, offer our driveways to Ocean Pines Police Department. And they can sit there and monitor the traffic presence. It's more important that they go to the truck route than it is to Cathell Road. Cathell Road has no homeowners there. Cathell Road is presence, but not creating safety. So whatever you can do, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Other public comments?
Amy Pack, 109 White Horse Drive. After what happened at last year's election, I thought everyone was in agreement that Ocean Pines wanted transparency and the ability to trust the next election results. Instead, this new election committee has been busy behind closed doors with no updates to property owners over the last several months. The last agenda was March 2023. The last minutes posted November 2022. However, today the election committee is proposing to change election procedures and change and disregard MO6, the election rules for Ocean Pines. Many new proposed changes have been made over these months by the new election committee. They decided to do away with online voting, so you must vote using paper. They want to change recount procedures, and now they want to change and use a company in Washington State to manage our votes, about as far away mail route as you can get from us, telling us that the local contractor wasn't interested in working on the election. The local contractor has denied this claim in writing. In our past elections, when we used the local company, had a last-minute ballot box, there were still 290 late ballots that were not counted in 2021. In 2020, there were 162 never counted ballots. Even before we experienced having our mail delivered with a fully staffed U.S. Post Office, there were 46 never counted ballots in 2019, 60 late never counted ballots in 2018, and 72 never counted late ballots in 2017. Obviously, the drop box at Ocean Pines that was available to property owners as late as Wednesday before the annual meeting will not be available if the ballots are to be mailed to Washington State. Considering the recent problems we have all had with the U.S. Post Office, can we trust that a mailed ballot is going to arrive okay and on time to Washington State? Is there even going to be a ballot drop box at all? We need the transparency that this current board promised. We need an election where every single property owner, multiple property owner, everyone who is eligible and wants to vote can, and owners have confidence that their vote will arrive in time to be counted and will be counted and recounted if necessary. We need to follow the established election rules and not try to change the procedures first and then change the rules to fit what the committee wants to do. Today on the agenda is a first reading of changes to MO6 and a motion to change procedures that go against MO6. Even if this board votes on a motion before they change the rule properly to fit that motion, there are still problems. The first reading has the change procedures for recounts in open session, as it should be. But apparently the actual counts, if you approve this motion, will be done in Washington State via Zoom, which is against MO6. Committees, including the election committee, need to follow the established rules, be open and transparent. Under these new proposals, we need to be able to trust our election process. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Janelle Bagley. I live at 22 Sandy Hook Road. And what I'd like to address with the board today is the properties in Ocean Pines that are neglected. I don't think this is a new problem. We've had a property here for 20 years. It became our permanent residence about 4 years ago. There are properties throughout Ocean Pines, even first impressions, when you come in the north gate, both properties, as soon as you come in the gate on the left and the right are in disarray. We have a property across the street from us who we've been here 4 years and it looks exactly the same as it did. You know, I complained about a tree being growing on the roof. Well, that was addressed, but there's cars with dead tags on them. There are cars with flat tires. I look around Worcester County and this area in particular, there are no other developments. Bayside, Glen Riddle, Deer Point, Ocean Reef, Whispering Woods, Fox Chapel, none of those developments have properties that are neglected like are here in Ocean Pines. And I know people are out for various reasons, but this has been going on for a very, very long time. Like I said, we've had a property here for 20 years. We live 3.5 hours away. And even when it was a seasonal property of ours, we took care of it because we're responsible for it as a homeowner. And I want to be proud to live in Ocean Pines. And I'm sure as board members, you want to be proud to say we're on the board and we have a beautiful community to live in. Thank you.
Actually, one comment to that. I wonder, can we find out which property she's talking about? Would you please follow up with John Viola at the end of the meeting or at some point and give the address of that property in question so they can go and take a look at it? Okay. Other public comments? Yeah, unfortunately, you get to make a public comment. I can't follow the violate the protocol for Robert's Rules of Order. Again, other public comments? Seeing none, I'm going to close the floor for public comments and move on to the next item on our agenda, and that is capital requests. The platform tennis court windstorm damage. John?
Yeah, thank you, Doug. Total Platform Tennis requesting authorization to go forward with staff recommendation of $26,394 for replacement of platform fence with a team recommended preferred vendor.
I'll entertain a motion to approve a requested expense of $26,394 to Total Platform Tennis for the replacement of a platform fence. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
I have a question.
Stuart.
John, this $26,000 repair, is that putting back that windscreen on that?
Well, it's the fence, not necessarily the windscreen itself. The windscreen's caused it.
Right.
Put back the fence. Put in also that I want reinforcements in there like the other court that happened years ago. So it's for the fence.
Okay.
The windscreens are another issue, a separate issue. I will not permit those windscreens to be put on the way they did. They will only be put on based upon the manufacturer and the contractor's recommendation.
Engineering. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of a $26,394 expense to Total Platform Tennis for the replacement of the platform fence, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The vote is unanimous. Next item on the agenda, that's all we had for capital requests. Next item on the agenda is CPI violations. There have been no CPI violations reported for this month's meeting. Therefore, we move to the next item on the agenda, that is unfinished business. We have no unfinished business from our previous board meeting. Therefore, the next item on the agenda is new business. First item is a motion to approve contract for legal services. The motion is to approve the contract for legal services from the law firm of Ayers, Jenkins, Gordy, and Palm. To approve the terms and conditions in the contract presented with the noted law firm for legal services required by the Ocean Pines Association and the background that OPA has approve the use of the law firm Ayers, Jenkins, Gordy, and Almond as the association's legal counsel. The specific terms and conditions of the contract have been submitted by the law firm and reviewed by the board of directors. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Steve?
Just a quick question. And I don't know whether it should go to Doug or John, but whoever. During the consideration by the board, there were several suggested changes to be made in the contract. Are those in the contract?
John confirmed, yes, we forwarded that information to council
Making the change.
earlier this week, and those changes will be made.
Yes.
Requested.
That's fine. Thank you.
Other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the contract as presented with the noted changes for legal services to Ayers, Jenkins, Gordy, and Almond, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please record the vote as unanimous. Next item of business, vote to declare existence of open violations. What?
Motion is to declare the existence of the open violations on properties included on the attached list, thereby suspending the voting rights and use of association amenities for as long as the violations continue to remain open. Purpose and effect is that ARC and CPI believe approving this request will shorten the timeline to compliance, save the association money, and provide a better forum for property owners to work out their problems as opposed to the Worcester County court system. This action does not mean that property owners who fail to comply during this period may not be forwarded to the attorney if it remains necessary to force compliance.
Is there a second?
A second.
Yeah, second discussion. Discussion,
I'd like to read the background.
please.
As of the date, these violations were forwarded to the attorney prior to the October 1, 2022 effective date of HB 15. The previous process to persuade residents to comply with open violations on their property was to send 2 notices, after which the case is referred to the general manager for further action, which means the case is sent to legal counsel, provided the property owner has not complied prior to that. This has proven to be inefficient and costly to the association. The change from previous legal counsel and lack of attention to diligently pursue cases by current legal counsel was a contributing factor. All the attached violations have been inspected to verify their status. All violations have been reviewed as of the date of this request, and all remain open. All but 2 of the attached violations represent the cases forwarded to the attorney in 2022. ARC has previously brought the board's attention the need to use interim enforcement tools currently at their disposal to help reduce legal costs and try to prevent property owners from having to become involved with the county courts. The board has responded positively by imposing restrictions on numerous properties. The authority to grant this request is found in the Declaration of Restrictions, the OPA Articles of Amendment and Restatement dated September 12, 2013, and the bylaws. ARC and CPI intend to make use of this process to bring more cases like this to the board for action. Future action will conform to the requirements of HB 615. As noted by the person who spoke during public comments, Jean Bagley. This is a concern to the people who bought into this community, that we have many properties that are in continuing violation for various reasons, including maintenance and unsightliness, neglect of property, and this motion is meant to use the enforcement tools that we had at our disposal prior to the effective date of HB 16, which was October 1, 2022. These properties are in continuing violation. Property stated may be one of them. And this motion requests that the board use their authority to force compliance by placing restrictions on the property rights of individuals in continuing violation.
Other discussion?
Yeah,
So
Colette, the list on the second page with the properties, section numbers and addresses and violations.
Yeah.
Is this being published somewhere? Is this going to be on our website?
It's in the packet for this meeting.
Well, I get that. The question I have
I
is,
have to ask our director of CPI.
okay, because the other part of this question is a two-part question. If this is going to be published, should we publish the names of the people that own these lots and sections? That's something to consider also.
Yeah, I think that's not been considered by our operations team to do that, but the property addresses certainly have been.
Okay.
published.
let me step in. Before we make that decision, I'd refer that issue to council to make sure that we don't have any privacy matters.
Okay.
I think the fact that we're identifying the properties is good enough for right now in order for the process to continue. And I don't know adding the name, would do anything to enhance the process at all. And it actually could put us at risk. So I want to take this forward. I highly recommend we move to go to council. Excuse me, John wanted to say something.
Yeah, thank you.
And Robert's rules, please, John.
Yes, and Doug, thank you for saying that. Right. So operational, this did come up several board meetings ago. Quite honestly, I wasn't sure what we said in there, but we are not putting the names. That would, I believe that type of policy, whatever, would have to come to a board. I'm certainly 100% behind Doug on the way he's saying approach this stuff.
Okay.
Right now, we're not.
Okay, next, Steve.
Thanks, Greg. I don't have a problem with the resolution. My question is, assuming that these properties or any future property remedies the violation, is there a mechanism in place by which they can then be considered a member in good standing? In other words, they can then avail themselves of the amenities and of voting rights, assuming they remedy the violation that they're cited for.
Yes, that would be an automatic process that our,
Please be recognized by the chair. Let me reach out. I'll still rescind Robert's rules. Linda, you had a question or an answer that might be able to.
Yes, we've been notifying anyone that complies out that is on this list have been notified. The membership office has been notified to reinstate their amenity rights and voting rights.
So stated differently, operations will manage that whole process and make sure that if a violation is remedied, they will no longer be on the list and have their rights reinstated. Okay. Steve, is that fine?
Fine, thank you.
Colette.
I was going to say what Linda said.
Hold on, Frank.
I mean, I support this, but it's kind of interesting. The homeowners associations really exist for two reasons. Number one is to protect homeowner value. And number two is to protect community lifestyle values, which include safety. Now, look, when you're talking about protecting homeowner value, there are two different approaches. And actually within Ocean Pines, if you're not familiar, there are two different approaches. One of which is a very proactive. We have an architectural review committee, for example, in the park that roams around. And if you're out of compliance, you can be fined, and you are fined immediately. Those of you that are familiar with Maryland, I came from the Columbia Association. And for these laggards that have properties that exist years and years, my advice is tangle with them one time, you won't tangle with them again. End of story. Worcester County is more laid back and laissez-faire. It's like, we're not going to be proactive, but if you bring a problem to us, we'll go out and we'll try to enforce the rules. And I think that's the majority of Ocean Pines. Our CPI personnel really don't roam the streets hunting for violations like they do in the aggressive communities. But the downside to that for a homeowner is when you find somebody 99, I'll give you the 99.9% what CPI's told me over 4 years. You're in violation. I'm sorry, I didn't understand the rule. I'll get in shape real quick. And then you deal with the 0.01% that game the system, and they do it for years. And that's where we run into, I think, the situation where we have to do this, because is it going to affect people? I don't know. I guess if you let your house turn into a dump, I could argue that you're not going to really care about using the pool or voting. Okay. But in the absence of the aggressive ability to do fines and to get their attention that way, this is a step that's available to us and it's a step that we should take. And see how it works out. And more aggressiveness on the part of legal counsel. By the way, the association driving legal counsel to go to court, that may help also. That's something you have to see how it plays out. But right now, it's a step that's available, and it's a step that that we should use to protect the homeowner value. By the way, in saying that, if you're not aware as a homeowner, there are 5 sections in Ocean Pines where if you do have an ARC violation, any 4 members up here can vote for a fine in that section. And that may be something for consideration in the future. Although coincidentally, in those sections, which are the newer sections, there's also not very many violations.
Noted. Other discussion?
The only reason why I brought it up about the names being published along with the addresses, because I know we did that in the past. And I just wanted to know if this was something that the ARC had in mind to also include. Thanks.
I have a comment. Conceptually, I am in favor of this as I think it through going forward. Right now, we have an identified list of properties. How are we going to handle additional properties that fall into some sort of violation? Meaning, will we have to have a motion every month, compile this list, and then every month or, every time we get a number of violations, have this same process at a board meeting? Because looking at our DRs, and I should, after so many years, I should know the paragraph and the number and everything, but there is language in there that states if you're in continuing violation of, the covenants, that you will lose the right to use amenities and you will lose your right to vote. Would agree with Frank that if you're at a certain level of disarray, you probably don't care that you can't use the amenities or you can't vote. But a fine certainly would probably get their attention. So the idea here is this something that will need to get, and again, I'm in favor of, but is this something we'll need to continually do? Or should we look at maybe passing this motion at this time and then taking a follow-up task, say, we really need to see if there's a way to operationalize this so the board wouldn't have to get involved every single month. Just a thought. But, again, I'm trying to think forward where, as we go through this, what will we continually need to do in order to address the issue? Colette.
Well, the authority to restrict membership rights rests with the board. So the board would have to make an affirmative decision to do that. These violations having occurred prior to the effective date of HB 615 gives us the authority to blanketly make these restrictions. Since HB 615 has come into effect, the property owners now have the right of an appeal before these restrictions can take place. So what now is happening is that a letter is going out on the signature of the president of the association to these property owners, advising them that they are in continuing violation and that if they remain in continuing violation, the next step may be the restriction of their property rights and other measures that we have at our disposal. I don't believe, I believe that at this point, if the property owner does not request a hearing, a list such as this may come back to the board for all of those who have ignored their opportunity, which has a specific time frame attached to it, to request a hearing. The list could come back and the board could give a blanket restriction of those property rights without hearing. I think you're right, Doug, that there should be a process, and the ARC has been requesting that the board develop a process in line with HB 16 since last October, and the board has not acted. I would certainly appreciate the leadership coming from this board to create a process that is in compliance with 615, and then the motion that will be coming forth after this will be another opportunity for us to develop a process to enforce and provide sanctions to those who do not comply with our enforcement efforts to our guidelines and other rules and regulations that the association has.
Yeah, and before I recognize you, Steve, I agree in principle with that. I think that certainly, at least my approach, my recommendation to my colleagues here would be, let's get this one done today. And, raise our hands and say, we accept the responsibility that there has to be some follow-up work on this, where it either A, could be just continually the way we do business, and as long as we're fine with it, or we have an opportunity to operationalize it in some more effective manner going forward. But the onus would be on us to go back and take a look at this. Maybe this is sort of that, watershed event that gets us kickstarted into that approach. So, that Steve?
It just dawns on me, we do have on our agenda a regular section dealing with CPI violations. It may be, as a housekeeping measure, we just add a subset to that to capture the list you're talking about.
Yeah, in the interest of time, yeah, let's not address that today. Let's just,
Oh, yeah.
our takeaway for, going forward would be that. I'll entertain one more comment on this. Any others? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to declare the existence of open violations in properties, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please record the vote as unanimous. Next item on the agenda is a motion to establish a system for fining.
This motion is for finding property owners and continuing ARC violation in the sections of Ocean Pines that grant the board the authority to take this action. Purpose and effect: to use the authority granted the board in the governing documents to issue a fine penalizing property owners who are in continuing violation of ARC guidelines in the sections of Ocean Pines for which that authority is included in their declarations of restriction. The sections that contain this authorization are Section 12, the interlinks, Section 15, Whitetail Sanctuary, Section 17, the Point, Section 18C, Mumford's Townhouses, Section 18E, Colonial Village North, Section 18F, Marina Village Condominiums, Section 18G, Marina Village Townhouses, Section 18S, Mumford's Landing Single Family, Section 19, Harbor Village, and Section 20, Triple Crown Estates.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion. What?
Background: the ARC has been proactive in asking the board to use the interim enforcement tools that have been available to them to help with minimizing the time between the notice of and compliance with outstanding violations. The board has been open to acknowledging the existence of outstanding violations and authorizing the suspension of right to vote in association elections and the use of and membership in association amenities for the time a violation remains open. The ARC believes the profile of the residents of Ocean Pines has been changing for some time, from that of part-time residency using their property on weekends and for vacation to that of full-time residency for all ages using the property as a primary residence. Some with school-aged children, many with full-time jobs in the area, and those who have found a location to enjoy retirement. This has resulted in elevating the status of outstanding violations from a minor inconvenience to a major annoyance. Again, I referenced the remarks that were made by Jean earlier in public comments that people who live in Ocean Pines full-time are asking that the board use their powers of enforcement, limited as they may be, to compel enforcement in all of the sections. I'll add that there also was an effort last year, I think it was, Frank, that we started the process of trying to change the declarations of restrictions in those sections that don't have binding authority, that would allow enforcement of short-term rental restrictions and potentially in the future to compel enforcement of the ARC violations and other rule violations in those sections that don't have using the power of fining. It was noted by Frank astutely that many of the people who are in continuing violation may not care about their voting rights and may not care about their ability to use the amenities. Most people do care about a fine that would be imposed upon them.
Other discussion? Frank?
So I would support this, but I would support it with the following caution. There's a pro and con to this system. I can tell you in the 4 years that I've sat here, I don't believe that in any of these sections, any violation has risen to the level of consideration by the board. Okay. Typically the violations, like Janelle mentioned, are in Bramblewood in section 2 and 3, in the older sections of Ocean Pines. And that requires a change in a declaration of restrictions to fine in those areas. And this gets into the area of fines. The reason I would support this is this. At the end of the day, if you look at our 8,500 lot owners in Ocean Pines, the vast majority of them do not trust the board and trust the board's ability to level fine. And in the time that I've lived in this community since 2013, I can tell you that people have said in John's chair and people have said up here in these chairs that I would not trust to fine my property. Pretty much simple at the end of the day. That's how it operates. And that's not an Ocean Pines issue. That's an issue that exists nationwide, okay, with homeowners associations. But establishing that list of fines with stakeholders that really understand the community. I'm talking about homeowners. I'm talking about realtors, okay? And talking with them realistically of what violations really impact property value. What violations really impact the quality of lifestyle that you expect in Ocean Pines. And understand that last statement is very individual, because what I want out of Ocean Pines as an individual and what Bill wants as an individual might be different. Okay, so if you start finding personal lifestyles or things like that, you're going to run into serious trouble. But make a list of things that really you think should be fined. Keep the list small and impactful. Implement it in sections where it's probably never going to be used. And then you might start doing something that doesn't exist today. And that's develop trust from the homeowners that power can be, they can trust the board and the general manager with using those powers to their benefit and not to their detriment. That's why I would support this. Overall, I would say that the number of properties here that are in disrepair right now don't have a serious impact on a community, but they sure have a serious impact around the people around them. I mean, you know, if you live next to a trash pit, I think it's going to affect your homeowner value, okay, and your lifestyle. So I support it for that reason, but with that caution to move ahead in a very measured manner to develop trust that you can use this new weapon that you're asking for.
Other discussion? Monica?
I support this also in that, and I realize some of these newer sections might not really have that many violations and things like that, but I think we set a precedent going forward and then look at the declarations to see if we need to make changes to enhance the lifestyles and properties of all of us.
What?
Yeah, I would just like to respond to some of the comments that Frank made, particularly regarding trust. Trust really rests with the degree to which a decision is made objectively versus subjectively. We have objective criteria in our guidelines. We have objective criteria in the rule book that the board asked to approve this last week by email. The application of fines is meant to be an objective process. It's a yes, no. Are you in compliance with the rule or the guideline or not? If you're not in compliance, nobody needs to question how offensive it may be or how much it may be part of a particular lifestyle. The rule is there. We all bought into this association knowing what the rules are, and in many cases, because these rules are in place It's the responsibility of the board to enforce those rules. This is a tool that's available to us in some sections. Those sections may not be great big violators, but it is a step in the process of demonstrating that the board has this power and may be able to expand this power to other sections in which there are more egregious violations or more numerous violations that are offensive to all of those who have bought into a community that has rules, expecting that those rules will be enforced.
Steve,
Yeah, maybe I should know the answer to this question, but I don't, so I'm going to ask. For the sections that are not named in this resolution, where the DRs for those sections are silent on the issue of imposing fines, and maybe this is a question that should go to council best, but is it possible for Ocean Pines to impose a permissible structure of imposing fines for where the DRs are silent, as opposed to going subsection by subsection? Because what's granted to anyone with a continuing violation right now, under the change in the statute, is the right to a hearing. So the rights of the potential violator would be protected. The question is whether or not, where the DRs are silent, can Ocean Pines as a larger body impose a system of fines similar to what's in this resolution? And I don't know the answer to the question. I'm just asking.
Well, Frank, I have a comment. So a couple things. Number one, in concept, I certainly agree with this. You all know my risk-averse approach to things. I'd want to make absolutely certain that there's not some obscure state law or county law that would, prevent us from, and I certainly believe the association has the authority to impose the fine. The way in which we're doing it is what I would want to research. I'd want to send to council and say, we are looking at the following. We believe we have the authority to do so, but please cross-reference the other documents that may be applicable
And that's
to
what-
potential
That's
decision.
precisely what I'm asking.
Because we want to make sure that we don't have to go back and basically undo something, or again, put ourselves at risk by taking an action that we weren't authorized to take. So while I don't think I think we're okay with this one, but I, again, as with the previous motion, believe we need some follow-up work, because a couple of years ago, I think it was about 4 years ago, we had talked to our council about what it would take to update the DRs in the sections that don't have the authority to fine specifically stated in the DR. All right. And it was actually a pretty simple approach to change the DRs. You're just going to change the language to the DRs and make an amendment. Now, not the downside, but the cost was obviously the cost for legal to do that. And obviously mailing out, and it would have to be done section by section, just like any other referendum. You'd have to go out and send this updated, list of amendments to that DR for that section to every one of the sections. And I'd like to think that it would be consistent across the board, but one of the other arguments or discussion points was the fact that we may end up with yet another inconsistency. 12 out of the 18 sections you can find, but if you live in these other two, you don't, and I don't like inconsistencies. It may not be, we may not be able to solve that problem, but I think that we owe it to the membership to look at that as a follow-up item to see if we can clean that up, if there's any option. So again, I think we're okay with approving this today. But I do want to, as long as everybody agrees, I want to take it to council and to say, here's what we're looking at going forward. Please advise accordingly. Are you okay with that?
Sir.
Frank?
To respond to Stephen, also, I think when we take your issue to council, Doug, we have been advised in the past that, number one, we cannot find in sections where the DRs do not specifically grant that authority to us by council. And we've also been advised by council that we cannot recover legal fees when we take people in violation of the DRs to court. We cannot recover our attorney fees unless it's specifically requested or outlined in the DRs. Now, that's one opinion that we have from one council. We have a new council coming up. We may want to check with them because not all attorneys may be in agreement with that advice.
All right, I'll entertain one final comment. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to establish a system of finding property owners as noted in the motion itself, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please record the vote as unanimous. Next item on the agenda is a first reading of revisions to Resolution M06. Rick.
Yes, first reading to amend the current resolution M06, elections and referendum voting procedures, the recount procedures. Purpose and effect, proposed revisions would amend the recount procedures under section 5.03, election specifically addressing the recount. In with that, you can see that there's some wordsmithing within the M06.
Okay. Noted as a first reading. Discussion. Steve.
I would hope time would be afforded to the bylaws committee to review the proposal. So I'm assuming we will not seek a unscheduled board meeting for the purposes of conducting a second reading. So that would be my only request.
So there's a request to refer this to bylaws and resolutions. Steve, when is the next bylaws and resolutions committee?
I wish you hadn't asked me that.
It's okay.
It should be the end of this season. Probably be next week or maybe the following week.
Okay.
It'll be before the next board meeting. That much I'm sure of.
All right. So why don't we refer it to the committee with the intent that there's a possibility that we could have a second reading with changes at the next board meeting in June. Everybody okay with that one?
Yes.
Okay, any other comments on this? All right, seeing none, thank you. Please record that we did actually conduct a first reading of M06 at this meeting. All right, next item on the agenda is a motion to approve the voting contractor. Rick?
Yes, motion is to approve the cost of $15,994.50 for sourcing a voting contractor election trust to perform the printing and handling of all election materials for the 2023 Board of Elections. Purpose and effect is to allow the election committee and OPA to enter into an agreement with election trust, single point of contact to conduct and perform all printing, mailing, receipt, and counting of all votes for the upcoming 2023 OPA Board of Directors election. The background on this motion is it is a responsibility of the election committee to source a contractor to perform the handling of the election materials with the upcoming election. The board approved 2023 election will be conducted with paper ballots. The election committee conducted a search for a national company to perform a full array of election services to include and verifiable elections by paper ballots. As an option, Election Trust can provide a hybrid balloting platform, operational vote by mail and online voting. The hosted cleared ballots platform will ballot design, tabulate, audit, scan, archive, which is federally certified system. The option of a hybrid ballot platform as well as a live observation via Zoom, counting and reporting of all ballots that is included in this pricing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. What?
So I'm not appreciating why this company's capability for hybrid voting or email voting as a consideration for this year, since that's not on the table for this year. I'm also not appreciating why we have heard from the local vendor that has been used for years. And the election committee's argument was that the processes that vendor used for many years was not in dispute and it's not a problem. And so I'm not appreciating why we would be going out of state for a vendor whose involvement in this process, particularly with respect to the issues with mailing things back and forth, why that is going to be an improvement over our being able to consider using the company that we've used previously at no cost savings whatsoever. And we're giving up an opportunity to support a local business. I'm not going to favor of this. There are many arguments why this is not in the best interest of Ocean Pines Association to go with this company this year.
Other discussion, Frank?
I have three questions, okay? And well, actually, I don't expect to answer one. If we're using the same process that we've used in the past, not the immediate past election, which I think we all agree was a fiasco. But if we're using the immediate process that we've had prior to the last election, okay, then why would the dates change? I think we need a cleanup of, we can't ignore the situation that a vendor that we've used for basically our past elections has said, look, I've been iced out of, for some odd reason, of this one. I mean, and my question would be, if we have an RFQ for the same process that we've always used in the past, then it would seem logical that you'd have the same dates to comply, send out the RFQ and get responses back. That does not appear to be the case from the communications that we've heard from the past vendor. But that's kind of something that I think just needs cleaned up. Again, it's this issue of community trust, okay, it's being raised. But there's two other things that I want to ask a question about. In going through this proposal, there is an inference, okay, that this vendor has the same capabilities that I'll say Worcester County has. And for those of us that voted by mail in Worcester County, when I get a ballot, they tell me it's on the way. We don't need that. But when I send my ballot in, I get something back from the Worcester County Board of Elections that says, we have received your ballot. When I look at the capabilities here, it appears that they have the capability of doing that. And it appears if they have that capability, that would take care of certain questions regarding using somebody out of the area. I mean, I send my ballot in right now, even in our existing system, right? I have no idea that it's been received and my vote has been counted. That's something that we should put in. And it seems to me that that's worth the cost of doing. Okay, I got your ballot, it's counted. The second thing is in regard to these late ballots, I give you the pro and con to it, okay? The average age of this community is 62. A vast majority of the people in this community own 2 properties. They're not 6-year-olds that need to be parented in terms of you have to do this by a certain time to get it in. Okay, so when you get a late ballot, the question is, why would there be a late ballot with all the communications that are put out as to, number one, what the dates are, and number two, unless you've lived in a cave in Afghanistan for the last couple of decades, who doesn't know what problems the U.S. Postal Service has in getting mail from point A to point B? So I'm not real sympathetic to people that say, my ballot's late. I mean, you're an adult, act like an adult if you want to vote. But, okay, in the rare and unlikely event that there's a good reason for that happening, why don't we just keep the ballot drop box at the police station, cut off at the regular cutoff date like we usually do? And I have heard rumors that there's a company called FedEx and a competitor called UPS that could send something overnight any place in this world for a relatively small charge. So you collect the ballots at the police station, okay, put it in a UPS package that may be a box, send it out to Seattle or wherever these guys are specifically located in Washington, and go through the same confirmation process. I got your ballot. Okay, it seems that if that's the case, problem solved. Just as a suggestion.
Okay, Monica.
On those same lines, is there anything preventing having several mailings out to this company via UPS? Do we have to wait to the deadline? Can we do this kind of say like, okay, we've got X amount of ballots, let's send them? Stagger the delivery to the.
So it sounds like someone was listening in on the meeting that John and I had yesterday on this matter. Truth be told, we had discussed that. We had, especially with regard to dates. The initial thought was that clearly we want to follow the rules and guidelines set up by the vendor to send everything out to Washington. I'm not buying the argument that there's any difference between the possibility of a delay of sending something from here to Washington versus sending something from here to Pennsylvania. I don't think there's any difference. It's the same level of risk. Quite frankly, who confirmed that everybody that got a ballot, received a ballot, meaning they all originated from here and they're going to all parts of the, at least the East Coast. How do we know that every one of the 7,225 people that were eligible to vote in the last election received a ballot? We don't know. So there's still some question regarding that. Okay. I don't know that we can solve that one, but the idea would be, so the first hard line was like, well, no, we want everything sent there. And then the idea was like, you know what? People, no matter what, are going to say at the last minute, oh gosh darn it, I gotta drop it off at the, so the idea of cutting off dropping it off at the police station, we obviously have to account for that. Okay. Especially in the first year of using a new system. So the idea was okay, why don't we do that? Maybe really kind of encourage them to send it directly to the vendor, but on the off chance that they can't send it to the vendor, obviously they'll drop it off at the admin building. And then the idea came, well, if they do that, should we wait until the last minute and then send all of them at once? Or should we send them, as we get it, maybe on a very periodic basis, maybe once a week or whatever? So we're open for discussion. At the beginning, I was not a big fan of continuing to drop it off at the admin building because, obviously, it's a variable that, we're trying to introduce a new system, but at the end of the day, I think it's practical because people are used to doing it that way. And there's not a lot of overhead or risk associated with continuing to offer that service and then put the onus on the association to, put them in a FedEx and overnight it there. So, I certainly am going to support this motion because I believe it covers all the things that we need to do with regard to election. It keeps the elections committee out of there. And then Frank, to your point, I had a discussion with the chair of the elections committee, and I'm told that the response to the RFP wasn't received by the date, even after a follow-up call. So, there's some conflicting information there. So, I'm just telling you what was told to me. So, it needs a little bit of cleanup. At the end of the day, I'm going to support this. And I think that we should work together to say, you know what, maybe the idea of keeping that drop box at the police station, at least this year, maybe we could phase it out. Maybe we don't, but at the end of the day, I think that's the most, at least practical way for everybody to wean them onto this new process. Other discussion. Steve.
Thanks. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
I'm going to oppose this on three basic areas. One is procedure. Resolution M06, attachment A, paragraph 9, places responsibility for counting ballots on the committee. And that it should be open to observation for those Ocean Pines members who wish to view the proceeding. In a room, and this is almost a direct quote, in a room sufficient to accommodate the process and association members wishing to observe the count. There cannot be any question that this language assumes that the count and the ability to witness the count is to be local and not on Zoom, Teams, Skype, or anything else. Second, in terms of procedure, there's no evidence that the elections committee met to undertake any deliberations relating to this contract. There's no announcement of a meeting, an agenda, or meeting or minutes of a meeting, save for the last one on March 23rd. And that meeting lasted between 20 to 30 minutes, and this subject never came up. And I would add that if you read the second report of the elections committee, it specifically says that we had met with the local contractor. We've discussed this. We've raised the issue of software and the high-speed scanner and all this other stuff. So this notion that they didn't respond, I'm told, having spoken to the local contractor, that there was a generalized agreement that they would speak again sometime in May. And that did not happen because this came out. Let me backtrack 1 second. Full disclosure. The local contractor, Ace Printing, made my campaign signs. So I have an opportunity to speak to the operator of that business. We spoke twice yesterday about this. And I'm familiar with the way he operates, so I'm comfortable with what his representation was. Second, cost. This contract is listed at just under $16,000 and does not include the postage cost as identified in the proposal of the BBM per outgoing packet paper, ballot design, proof, print, and mail services, which could add up to about another $4,000 in expenditures. Because if you look at pre-sort rates, it's about $55 per package. If you're looking at around 8,000 packets, you're probably looking at probably a little bit more than 4,000 more than what is in this proposal. Last year's contractor, again, who I talked to, who is still interested in continuing to work with Ocean Pines, came in at about 8,500 last year. In addition, the committee noted in its last report that that the Ocean Pines bought a high-speed scanner purchased in 2022. And that after testing, the scanner got high marks. The issue was a variety of issues raised by the committee. Paper stock, ink bleeding, poor software, and the committee apparently resolved those issues. So again, you have to ask yourself, we purchased a scanner in 2022, we'd have new software, the local contractor says the software would work, so why are we spending at least $16, probably more than $16,000 to do this? And there's nothing in this proposal that says that the local contractor used over the last number of years cannot do the same function that this contract calls for at a lower cost. Finally, policy. The committee recommended and the board accepted the abandonment of online voting, at least for this year. As a reminder, there are 811 ballots casted electronically in last year's election, 2,341 votes in total off those ballots. At no point has this committee or its predecessor committee indicated a problem existed with online voting. Now, I'm not raising this to rehash the old arguments. That's not my point. I raise this because we have closed off one venue for people in Ocean Pines to vote. We've closed off electronic voting. Now we're talking about closing off the drop box. Whether we do or we don't, there's nothing in this proposal that says it'll continue. And I am told that the drop box, the receptacle, whatever you want to call it, accounts for anywhere between 30 to 45% of the total votes cast in an election. Now, that's what I got from the local contractor who's been doing this for years. So we're talking about a significant number of votes here. Now, we should also note that the cutoff date for the ballots is August 9th. The count is supposed to be August 11th. Business reply mail, which is the ballot going back to Bainbridge Island, Washington, is going to take much longer than a local mail of 2 to 3 days. Assuming, first of all, let's be honest. Most of the people who vote who live in Ocean Pines, own properties in Ocean Pines, probably exist, even if they're not here full time, they exist within a, whatever you want to call, 100-mile, 150-mile, 200-mile radius. We're not talking about 3,000 miles to the other coast here. So that's the first thing. The other thing is all of this mail in part gets sorted at various facilities operated by the United States Postal Service. And at each point it gets sorted depending upon its location. So mail leaving here gets sorted at one place, gets put on a plane, goes someplace else, gets sorted again, and ultimately is received by essentially the people at Bainbridge Island. But you're talking about a 2-day window between the time the last ballots are received or date stamped or however, because there's no date stamp on the envelope, because it's business mail, and when the count takes place. So there are a lot of people in that situation who would be disenfranchised, even though they followed the procedures that are being laid out here. And as Frank has sort of alluded to, this proposal basically leaves us wholly dependent on the abilities and structure and funding of the United States Postal Service. And I'll guarantee you there's more than one person in this audience right now who's still waiting for the Christmas card from their favorite aunt and uncle to be received. So I just think we have an opportunity to keep it local. We have a system that has worked. And there's just too many breakdowns in this to make it worthwhile. And I think we would be wrong to approve this proposal.
Other comments? Rick?
Yeah, first I wanted to thank the election committee for putting this together. They spent close to over 100 hours of their volunteer time going out and getting proposals. They did reach out to the local vendor here, an RFP. They failed to reach the deadline with the RFP to submit. And you know, that's what happens. There are deadlines to these things. As far as dealing with the postal service, we've dealt with that even here, even with last year's election, which we all know turned out to be a disaster. As far as being able to trust the mail from here to Washington State or from back to here, I mean, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other with that. It happens. It's unfortunately the way things are with the postal service. But we also have to have the onus on our community and our residents to inform them and continue to inform them about the election, making sure that they get their ballots in the mail on a particular time, having email blasts from the association, have things posted to remind them of how important it is to submit their ballots there. You know, I am all in favor of this. I think having a company that has been doing this for a long time, a company that is federally certified in elections, who have had clients, association clients, HOAs, and has a great background in doing so, and contacting them myself, where they've had flawless election processes, that when receiving and scanning of the ballots and having the archive of the ballots. I just think that this is one of the things that we need to do moving forward with the technology that we have. And I think it's one of the things that's going to be best for our association.
Other comments? I have one, but Frank, go ahead.
So I guess my question still exists. I mean, I understand the pros and cons. I've listened very carefully. The thing that seems to me that is missing, that we need, is a positive confirmation from this vendor to me as the voter that they've received my ballot. Do they have the ability to do that? And is that going to be incorporated in this proposal? That's the question. Because otherwise, I mean, and by the way, I think this points out a flaw in our current system compared to our county system. As a voter, I have no idea whether we use ACE printing or whether we use the people in Bainbridge Island, that my ballot has been received and is counted. And that is an important, given the situation. I mean, what can happen? Okay. Realistically, whether we're going to Baltimore or whether we're going to Bainbridge Island, I think that's important, because I will say this. I would be absolutely shocked beyond shocked if, given our population here, if people started after the election, if people started saying, hey, wait a minute, I sent my ballot in and I don't have confirmation my ballot was received, the board will know about it and the election committee will know about it. And they'll know about it pretty doggone quick. And that's a missing step in here that we need, irrespective of where we go.
Right. So, no. Comment. So a couple things. Steve, I want to address one of the comments you made, but Frank, the same way, we don't get confirmation now. Even all these years, we've been sending our ballots in. We do not get a confirmation that our ballot was received.
Right.
That's been, whether you call it a problem, it's an ongoing situation that's, I guess, unless having heard specific complaints about it, that no one's really complained about. They just make I think is a reasonably valid assumption that their ballot was received and recorded. Okay. So, but I agree with you. If there's a method within this new vendor to have them acknowledge the fact that the ballot was indeed received and recorded with a response back to that person, I think that would be an absolute benefit. And quite frankly, an enhancement to the way we're doing it now, whether it was the old system or potentially this new system. So I think that goes without saying. Quite frankly, the due diligence would be to go out there and make sure that they do that. The second thing, Steve, anticipating the question regarding the language in M06, knowing that this was going to be on the agenda today, I took the liberty with John yesterday and we met and I brought in counsel and asked him about section 9 in attachment A, which said two things. Number one, the committee is responsible for counting the ballots. And she said it wouldn't be a strong argument to say that means they must, as a member, physically count the ballots. She said it infers that, all right, but it's not absolute. So we decided that the best thing to do would be to change that language, propose a change to that language, say is responsible for the count of the ballots, whether it be in person or by a third party, as noted in, I believe it's section 5 of attachment A. So that was one thing. The second thing was a room, the size, large enough to accommodate the counting and any people that want to observe the count. I won't go into all details, same kind of thing, just a minor adjustment of that language to allow for the fact that you can view it, because under no circumstances does it use the word in person. I'm not going to talk about this anymore. It doesn't use the word in person. So the idea would be we would look at proposed changes, because we're going to bring up M06 next month for a second reading, and those will be incorporated and discussed to see if they're valid and relevant that to be included in there. So at the end of the day, we know that we have to do that just to clean up the language. Is it absolutely egregious with the way the language is right now? No. But to reduce the amount of risk and interpretation of another perspective on that language, it's better to maybe change that language and make it a little more succinct.
Well, Doug, if I may, just to respond.
Quickly respond, and because we have to move on.
We would make these changes only to accommodate this contract. That's the only reason we would do it. Now, hold on, and wait, let me finish.
Go ahead.
And the second point is really if you read the language as it is, unchanged, you could not make the case that this was not meant to be an on-site count process. And the M06 and the various attachments allow for a third party to do the count anyway. One assumes it would be an IT person or, that sort of thing, but it's not as if the elections committee is sitting there counting one after another. But the only reason those changes in M06 are being offered is to accommodate this contract. And the question ultimately has to be, is there enough here to do the contract? I mean, again, you can talk about when you mail something to Baltimore or to Washington, it's the same thing. It's not. This mail is going to get sorted 3 or 4 times. We're talking about several days of interval between the time the ballot is submitted to the time it reaches the contractor. That's not going to happen if we use a local contractor.
Two things real quick. I want to disagree with you respectfully that this language is meant to vilify the things for this contract. Okay. Number one. Number two, I'll maybe give you the benefit of the doubt on the first one where it says must be counted by the elections committee. Okay. That's a weak argument. The second thing would be, suppose we decide that we are not going to have a room, and that the counting is going to be done in a room, but it also gives the opportunity for people who may not necessarily be in that room to view the counting online. Okay, so in other words, we're giving them that option in the new world of technology. They may not want to come here and sit down, but they may sit at home with a cup of coffee and watch that if they're so inclined. And that is irrespective of any new contract coming up.
So we're going to give them the opportunity to.
Let's not discuss it anymore. We're not going anywhere right now. So let's not discuss it anymore.
The opportunity to view online, but not the opportunity to vote online?
Excuse me, Steve. Please, you're out of order. All right, we're beleaguering the point here. Let's move on. I'll accept one more comment. Colette.
Yeah, I have concerns about I don't disagree that we would want to get confirmation of receipt of ballots. What are we going to do if members say, hey, I sent my ballot, I never got a receipt, I still want my vote counted? We have nothing in our governing documents to address that eventuality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, point taken. And it's existed that way for a very, very long time. All right. So
it hasn't existed.
Yes, it has.
Respectfully, Doug. If we are going to require that this vendor give us a confirmation of receipt, we are introducing a procedure that was never in place before, and an opportunity for individual voters, first time ever, to say, hey, I sent my ballot in 2 weeks ago and I never got a confirmation. I sent it in early. I did everything I was supposed to do, put a stamp on it, got it in the mailbox, but I got no confirmation. My vote is not being counted. This election is decided by one vote. My vote is the vote that got kicked out.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly
That's a problem.
risk. I would agree with you. That's a risk. It's, that's not an easy problem to solve because, of course, you also, and I hope to say not to annoy anybody, but you also have to account of the honesty of people. Maybe they received and just said, you know what, I'm going to stir the pot and tell them that I didn't receive it. How do we prove that they didn't count it? Okay, so, I mean, there's a lot of different ways.
It opens a lot of cans.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we can either accept that as a risk and try to address it, or we could say, you know what, we aren't going to send a confirmation. You're just going to have to make the assumption that your vote was received and counted. I mean, there's no right answer there. I mean, nothing is more accurate either way. I mean, it's just something that we have to live with unless, I know you come in and fingerprint so and so. I'm sorry, I'm not going to open the floor for discussion. So again, there may be some more homework that we got to do, but we've got to move forward. I just think that there's been enough research done, and certainly more that can be done before the election comes in to maybe address some of these problems. I think these are a couple of good questions. The onus on the vendor to say, these are our concerns. How are you going to address them? Okay, because they're very concerns that would obviously affect the potential accuracy of the election results. And I would agree with you on that one. I think we really need to push them back.
It's in here.
It's in the contract.
It's in there.
What's this?
They show the clear. Here, it says for tracking ballot return voter credit tracking processing, so they'll receive it.
Okay.
That they have received.
Okay, yeah,
the
right
credit.
here. So did you see?
Contract.
It's in there.
Clear ballot return voter credit tracking, processing, tabulated, and data archiving service. All right, so they have included
All
in
tracking.
that they will indeed track the ballots and confirm.
Came in.
All right, now the question would be, okay, it goes back to the mail. They sent it back. Now, the question would be, what I would ask them is, do you communicate this by email or do you record it in your system where we could go to you and say, okay, did Joe Smith vote? And I think the answer would be, they would be able to say that. That way we remove the.
They don't have any.
Tell you what, we go down this rabbit hole. I think we've got enough right now to move forward in the interest of time and recounting the same arguments over and over again. So I will entertain one more comment and then we can move forward. All right, I'll close the floor and call the question. Those in favor of approving the voting contractor in the amount of $15,994.50 to Election Trust, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? Please record the vote as 4 aye, 2 nay, 1 abstention. Motion carries.
Ready for prime time.
All right, next item on the agenda, motion to approve changes to resolution B02. Steve, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Doug. This would be a motion to approve the changes to resolution B02, B02, rules of order for meetings of the Board of Directors. Purpose and effect is proposed changes would amend the current resolution concerning the meetings of the Board of Directors, specifically who may make public comments. Bylaws and Resolutions Committee by charging documents sent the board suggested changes to B02 for its consideration. A first reading of the proposed changes took place at the April 2023 board meeting. And as noted at the time, the first reading of the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee has included language in B02 that requires any person to make a public comment to attend the meeting in person to make such comment, and that is highlighted in red. I'll just add one other point, and I've informed the committee of this. I will vote against this because I would prefer to let everybody who has comments make comments, but
Let's, hold on. We haven't had a second. Is there a second? I will second it. Discussion. Steve.
well, I'll restate what I just said. I've informed the committee. I will vote against this because I don't support the idea of limiting public comments to being only people who appear in person. We are doing hybrid meetings, assuming we have the ability to make sure it's the right person is speaking, they should be allowed to make their comments. So that's.
What?
Yes, I'll be voting against this for this. During my presidency of the association, I strove to make these meetings more accessible to everyone and participation in these meetings more accessible to everyone, people who cannot be here in person for physical limitations or geographic limitations. I think this is a bad idea to restrict full participation in the meetings by the membership.
Other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the proposed changes to resolution B02, we say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions?
You're an ascension?
Opposed. Please record a vote 4-3. The motion passes. Next item on the agenda, revisions to resolution B03. Steve.
Thank you, Doug. I just put it away. My apologies. Motion is to approve revision to B03, excuse me, addressing procedures for virtual and or hybrid meetings, in-person and virtual or electronic meetings. The purpose and effect is the proposed changes to resolution B03 addresses the requirements as well as participation for association members who attend virtually or electronically. The background, this revision to B03 was recommended by the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee by way of a charging document at the March 2023 board meeting. The first reading of those proposed changes took place at the April 2023 board meeting. And while this matter had been previously discussed and considered by the prior board in 2022, there was at that time no further action. This revision to resolution B03 requires that the general manager report to the board that the capability exists for only qualified members to attend virtually and to be counted toward a quorum, to vote, and to fully participate in the meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Discussion. Steve, you want to read them?
After reviewing the discussions of the prior board on this subject, the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee believes that these suggested changes allow for virtual participation by association members after ensuring that sufficient safeguards exist for assuring the presence of a quorum, voting, and full participation by only qualified association members.
Other discussion? Colette?
Full participation is not defined. Does that mean that public comments will be allowed virtually at the annual meeting, despite the inability to do so at our board meeting? I don't think this is ready for prime time until that's cleared up.
May I respond?
Steve?
The intent of the committee was to make it clear that full participation included, for lack of a better term, audio participation. I will make the observation that these two resolutions address two different matters. One addresses board meetings, whereas we've all been told in the past, board meetings are for the board to transact business. The association meeting is of a broader scale, but the intent was to allow them to participate without being present, in addition to being counted for a quorum and for voting.
Other comments? I have one. We're putting the onus on the GM and his operations team to confirm that they can meet the requirements of identifying and validating that a person attending remotely is indeed a member of the association. Do we have that in writing or in operationally anywhere? I have not seen that.
It's, if I may respond,
please.
The committee's view was that was the central issue at the time the last board took this up, that there was no way to ensure that people who participate or tried to get online could be counted as a quorum were in fact association members. And so the charge is that the general manager would have to inform the board that that the staff has the capability to ensure that anyone who attempts to be counted for a quorum, to vote and to participate in the association meeting is in fact a member of good standing. Whether or not, I don't know right now whether or not the capability exists. I would assume there's a way to interface everything, but I don't know that. But you couldn't have this division in place for participation without the general manager certifying that it can be done.
Yeah, any other comments? My comment is that while I agree in concept with this, until someone shows me that the GM and his team can actually do that validation, with accuracy and in a timely manner, then I believe we're a little premature in having this one here and maybe suggest that we table it and bring it back up at the June meeting with the intent that we need to follow up with the GM to see if he and his team can address these requirements. I don't want to vote this motion down and have to bring it up next month. I would rather table it because in concept, there is, some merit there. But again, I'm not comfortable since we do not have that information. Certainly it may take a little bit of time for them to get that if they can.
If I may inquire, then who is going to charge the GM and the staff with completing that task?
I will.
You?
I will take that as a responsibility to get with the GM and determine whether or not they can actually validate online or remote attendees to the annual meeting. Any other comments? All right, do all agree that we'll table this until next month with my responsibility of getting to the GM with what I just mentioned?
I'm good.
Fine, I'm fine.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Make a note to table it. Stuart, please make a note that we're going to table this till next month. All right, next item on the agenda, to motion to amend the revisions to resolution B05. Steve.
Thank you, Doug. This is to approve revisions to resolution B05 addressing conflicts of interest. The proposed revisions to B05 will address changes in the governing document of Ocean Pines and state statutes. This revision to B05 was recommended by the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee and had its first reading at the April 15th, 2023 board meeting. The suggested changes to B05 were referred to council for review and editing, and the attached version of B05 includes those suggested changes which appear in red to the same ones that we had at the first reading. There were no changes between the two.
Okay, is there a second to proposed revisions to B05?
Second.
All right, discussion.
Changes in the attached version to B05 include the appropriate citations to the charter of the association and its bylaws. It also states what constitutes a conflict of interest as found in section 3A. I would add that after consultation with council, the suggested language in section 3B under confidential information, which appears in red, is inappropriate considering the subject matter of this resolution. And I have an amendment, which all the members of the board also have, with the offer to strike that language, which I'll offer at the appropriate time.
Other discussion? Okay, knowing that there is an amendment coming, I will Steve, I'll allow you to entertain getting that amendment to this particular motion.
Thank you, Doug. Motion is to amend the revisions in resolution B05 dealing with conflicts of interest to strike the second sentence of section 3B entitled confidential information. The proposed second sentence in section 3B addresses the disclosure of confidential information, which is undefined in this resolution. The subject of this resolution is limited to that in that it addresses financial or personal gain or benefit for the person involved or his or her family. The background is this revision to B05 was recommended by the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee at its first reading at the April 15th meeting. At that meeting, the board was informed after consultation with council, the sentence which is the subject of this amendment was inappropriate for the subject matter of this resolution.
Is there a second to this motion to amend? I will second. Discussion.
If I may, the resolution B05 addresses any financial or monetary advantage or benefit a director, officer, employee, or committee member may realize due to their duty to the association. In section 3B, the additional language, which appears in red, addresses disclosure of confidential information undefined in this resolution, which may not conform to the subject matter of the resolution, that is financial and monetary advantage or benefit. The limitation on disclosure of confidential information could be a matter for board consideration in another more appropriate resolution.
Two questions. Number one, while I understand council's reference to the fact that it might not be appropriate in this particular verbiage in this resolution, I do have pause for concern that striking anything having to do with confidential information that could lead to the existence of a conflict of interest may not be in the best interest of the association, meaning that I don't see that it should be completely removed. The idea would be if there's a piece of confidential information that would show a conflict of interest and we're saying that we're not held to that, then I don't know. That's my only question. The second part of it is, well, there's three. The second part of it is, I think confidential information. And if you're sitting in a position on a committee that makes decisions or on a board that's responsible for making decisions, you better know what confidential information is. And if you're sitting up here and you don't know that, you shouldn't be sitting up here. The other part of it, the third part is, if it's not in this, where does it go? there's got to be some place where there's specific reference to the requirements and responsibilities of a board member to maintain confidentiality from a closed session, from any advice from legal counsel. And unless that is somewhere else, I'm not in favor of striking it right now, despite, even though I don't like to go against counsel, I'd at the very least go back to counsel and say, help me understand further why you believe we shouldn't have this. And if he or she recommends it in another place, then fine, we have to do that. And then to follow up with that, in between now, if we strike it and it becomes part of our governing documents, and the time we change, with the update from the attorney, what happens to how we handle confidential information? Suppose that takes a month. So in that month, are we not bound by confidentiality? Because it's not stated in our, in the rules. Meaning, again, extreme example, I understand that, all right? But, me and being risk averse, I want to make sure that we don't assume anything, that we do have those issues covered, we have them addressed. The idea here is that if we do this right now and we do strike this language, and then obviously we'll have to go back to the original resolution changes, proposed changes to B06 with these updates, what position are we in? Okay? Steve, Colette, go first. Yeah, Colette.
This language wasn't in there before.
I know.
Right? And we still have that same obligation before, right?
Mhm.
I think the point here is that we all agree that this language should be somewhere, but it doesn't belong in the conflict of interest resolution. We need to find the resolution and put it there.
Okay.
I think that's
to your point. If you're removing it from here, and again, I'm splitting hairs here. If you're removing it from here, shouldn't there be a reference to the other document, governing document that were created that has confidentiality requirements? In other words, as noted in, and you put where these things are, because I just have a sort of just a general concern that if we don't state confidentiality requirements in a conflict of interest, that we're missing something. It's just me. So let Steve go next, and you can talk.
Yeah, Doug, a couple of observations. One is this, and let me backtrack 1 second. Counsel that I spoke to was Jeremy, because he was the one who had these revisions in the first place. So just make that clear. The second point is that this new language, which I'm suggesting should be struck, was never in B05 to begin with. So you would always have the same problem that you're identifying. I would also add, for what it's worth, that while we may all think we know what confidential information is, to some degree, we have to be guided by what's in our state statutes, which, and we've talked about this, I think, in the past, the notion that you can limit the ability of the board to operate in closed session sort of gives you the parameters of what you're looking for. And I would think that there almost has to be some inclusion of that notion in whatever happens. And you and I talked about this briefly, but I would say that there have been discussions, and I think there's a charging document in the draft, and don't hold me to that, dealing with bringing back resolution B08, which I think which is ethics, which would include, I think, the appropriate discussion relating to confidential information, whether it has to be specifically defined, referred to by state statute, or however. I think that's something that needs to be worked out, but I think at that point you sort of covered the gamut. The particular problem, let me raise one other problem, and that is, to the extent the subject matter of this resolution is financial gain, having the language that's in paragraph 3B, dealing with confidential information, sort of makes it being risk adverse. If this came up in a court of law, the judge is going to look at it and say, well, what am I dealing with here? I mean, one talks about financial gain, the other one talks about financial confidential information, for which there's no definition and doesn't fit under financial gain. So I'm not sure that you accomplish much by leaving it in there. I think that, again, almost like the previous two resolutions, you have two separate subjects that have to be covered. And That's why I think it's appropriate to take this out. And I would have no problem in, trying to ensure that within, maybe not the next board meeting, the following board meeting, the bylaws committee has a package ready for the board to look at in terms of ethics. I have no problem with that.
But
Yeah, and to add to that, I don't believe this statement goes far enough. I think we need a statement that really is in a document that is meant to address itself to ethics, conduct, whatever, that defines what affirmative actions taken by directors to protect the confidentiality of information, to include things like keeping their email confidential from other members of their household, documents that are brought that are confidential that we have in our possession to be maintained in a confidential way. I think this really doesn't go far enough, but definitely doesn't belong here. So I would say if this goes out, we should be charging ourselves with creating a new resolution, going back to bringing B08 back, some resolution that does the job that's needed.
Other comments? Stuart?
So just so I'm clear, we're looking to table this, send this back to the committee and have them do it again?
I don't think so.
No.
It's going to be up or down then?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
With the amendment?
The amendment is stated, is to strike
Okay,
language in section 3B, the last sentence in section 3.
okay, I got you.
And I will say, based on that argument, I could live it. I'm still a little risk averse, but knowing that, again, as in previous things we've done, we have some homework to do. So with that in mind, I certainly could support this. You guys have convinced me that that's.
And Doug, if I may, any member of the board who wants, and I'm speaking for them, but I know this is accurate, any member of the board who wants to come to the bylaws meeting to raise these issues should feel free to do so. I mean, it's an open meeting.
Yeah.
So feel free to participate.
All right, any other comments on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the amendment of striking the second sentence in section 3B of B05, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please record that the vote was unanimous, and let's move back to the motion that was on the floor with regard to accepting the changes in resolution B05 now as amended. Is there any continued discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting the proposed changes to resolution B05 as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please record the vote as unanimous. Thank you, folks. Next item on the agenda is revisions, approval of revisions to B06. Steve.
Thank you, Doug. To approve revisions to resolution B06 dealing with indemnification policy. The proposed revision updates and revises the authority for indemnification of certain individuals, the conditions required for indemnification, and the inclusion of certain volunteers to be indemnified. This revision to B06 was recommended by the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee, had its first reading at the April 15th, 2023 board meeting. At that time, the board was informed that council had reviewed the draft resolution and made required citation as well as changes to the text of the resolution. I will add that this resolution was last reviewed by the board in 2020 and was initially passed in 2008.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Steve.
If the suggested revisions to B06 would update the policy of who may be indemnified by the Ocean Pines Association Incorporated. The suggested changes appear in red in the attached resolution. Among the changes include a finding that a person was acting in good faith within the scope of the activity assigned may be indemnified, and states clearly that those who have acted in bad faith or act with active and deliberate dishonesty would not be subject to indemnification. It also includes the ability to indemnify certain volunteers and does not require it.
Other discussion? Stuart.
Yes, on B06, section 4, indemnification of volunteers, where you strike the word shall and use the word may. If they're going to volunteer, I don't understand why they aren't automatically indemnified if they're volunteering on behalf of the association, why they, I'll withdraw that because I saw that wrong. Never mind. Thank you.
Other comments? Yeah, just an FYI, I see those changes and the other ones suggested by council are certainly in line with the intent of this indemnification policy of resolution B06. So I'm going to support it. So on saying one more comment. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the proposed changes to resolution B06, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please record the vote as unanimous. Next item on the agenda is a review of resolution M07. Steve.
Thank you, Doug. The Bylaws and Resolutions Committee has requested the board to review M07 dealing with bulkhead and waterway maintenance and enact any changes it deems necessary. This resolution was discussed March 23, 22 board meeting. However, it appears no further action has been taken. While it would be timely to review the entirety of M07, the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee calls the board's attention specifically to section 4A dealing with canal depth. It is possible that any change to canal depth requirements would entail discussions with and perhaps approvals from appropriate state and federal agencies. The Bylaws and Resolutions Committee is not recommending any changes to M07.
All right, just let it be noted in the minutes that a review of M07 was requested by the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee, and if we decide as a board to take further action, we will bring it up at a subsequent meeting. Any other questions or comments on that? No. Seeing none, I will close the floor for new business. The next item on the agenda is appointments. We have two. I'll ask for consideration of taking both. First one is Nancy Radke, First Term Aquatics Committee. And the next one is Tracy Rettle, First Term Aquatics Committee. I'll entertain a motion to appoint both of those individuals. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
So Nancy Radke's address is in Newark, Delaware. And at the top of the page here, there is written 385 Ocean Parkway. Has someone verified that she lives in Ocean Pines and owns property and is eligible to sit on the committee?
The question was asked, yes.
That question asked?
Yes, it was asked and verified.
Okay, asked and verified.
Thank you.
Frank, just so you know, Frank's the liaison to the Aquatics Committee. So, okay, any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting the appointments of Nancy Radke, First Term Aquatics, and Tracy Rettle, First Term Aquatics, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please record the vote as unanimous. And I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Please vote. Thank you, everyone.